right, well, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Reed. I'm the education specialist with the Oracle Applications and Technology Users Group. I'm excited to welcome you all to the EPM Week 2024 session, Ultimate Financial Transformation, Boost Your Biz with EPM Planning, Apex, and Narrative Reporting. First, I'd like to thank Datavail for sponsoring EPM Week 2024. Seriously, these weeks could not happen without your support, and we're so grateful for you and your partnership, not just during EPM Week, but also year-round. I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute throughout the session. However, you're welcome to send questions at any time through the Q&A in the Zoom platform. We'll address questions at the end of the webinar. If you're interested in receiving CPE credit, your participation is required. To be eligible to receive CPE credit, you must be logged into the webinar for at least 50 minutes. Ask a question under your username through the Q&A area of Zoom and complete the session survey at the end of the webinar. For tracking purposes, questions posted in the chat are not CPE eligible. They must be asked in the Q&A. We are recording the session. The recording, as well as the slide deck, will be available to EPM Week 2024 attendees and OA2G members in the knowledge base within 24 hours. Now I'd like to turn it over to our sponsor, David Silverstrim, Global EPM Practice Leader with Datavail, and Jesus Dominguez, Principal Solution Architect with Datavail. Thank you so much for presenting. You guys can take it away.
All right, Jamie, thank you. And, my apologies. You're going to see my head spin a little bit as I go screen to screen here. Hopefully everyone can screen is presenting correctly, Jamie, and we'll go from there. Again, as Jamie said, my name is David Silverstrim. I'm the EPM Global Practice Lead for Datavail. I'm joined today. We have a few others on the line. We're doing this from a panel and presentation standpoint. I also have Jesus Dominguez, our EPM Solutions Architect, also joined by our narrative reporting specialist, Arun Kancharla, is on the line. And then the package that we're presenting is specific to one of our clients that we have worked heavily with for over a year in development of many of their aspects. And that is Kent Stenbeck is joining us from Retirement Housing Foundation. And he'll be here to help comment as we walk through his application also. So as we said, it is EPM Planning, Apex, Narrative Reporting. We entered into RHF. They are a EPM Fusion ERP user, adding on EPM Planning and Narrative Reporting, and then moved into many of the aspects of Apex. So rather than just have this standing in front of the class and walking through slides, we're going to make it a little bit more interactive as we go through. As Jamie said, Datavail is one of the sponsors of EPM Week, so thank you for all of you that have attended the different sessions this week. I know that I was on the Tuesday panel also, so you're seeing my face again, unfortunately, on this wonderful camera here, along with Aki as the two sponsors of Cloud Week 24. A little bit about, before I talk a little bit about Datavail, there is a session form for the chance to win that will go out at the end of the session. We've generally found that free beer for a year is a great way for my marketing department to find out how I'm doing on these sessions, and for us to really get rounded answers back on what we can do to help you or what we can do to improve these sessions, so that everyone is learning from them as we move forward. So please take a few minutes to enter the free beer for a year. The link is on the page. The link will be in the detail as it goes out. A little bit. Are the slides changing? Let me stop there for a second.
We are able to see.
Datavail, we are consulting and managed services partner.
Okay, thank you. All right. From Datavail's perspective, just a little bit of an introduction to Datavail. Datavail's been in business for 20 plus years, in the Oracle space for over 17. In the cloud space since Oracle went to the cloud in 2014 from EPM perspective. We do both net new project implementations, as well as have a full managed services team for all things EPM. We've been a long-term Oracle partner, actively involved in many aspects, have some IP in terms of monitoring tools and backup tools that we use in the EPM space. So overall, a right size and a niche market and all things Oracle EPM, as well as all Oracle 360. Just a little bit more. Yes, the slides will change. There we go. Data and security compliance, what we refer to as our Oracle Enterprise apps, makes up a little over 40% of our business. We are involved in all things analytics and all things database also. So very stringent data and security compliance records that we've achieved and certifications that we've achieved over time. A little bit about the credentials. Again, the 18 Oracle specializations. Of course, what we're talking about today is planning and narrative reporting, but obviously we touch everything Oracle and then are not industry specific. We're across all industries. And now the real meat of why we're here today. To step into, from an agenda standpoint, what we'll do is we'll walk through, and Jesus will take you through our planning application, through our narrative reporting application, through our Apex application that has been built for RHF. Questions and answers. Questions are welcome throughout. Jamie will be monitoring that for us. If there's something that's an immediate, raise your hand and have that interactive discussion. We'll obviously make sure that we have time at the end to roll back to anything else that you have further questions and answers. For anyone that's late in joining, again, one of the panelists that's here with us today is the Director of Budgets and Analytics at RHF, at Retirement Housing Foundation, Kent Steckbeck, so he's able to relate from a user standpoint and answer questions as they've encountered it during their initial few months of use. Somebody put in another slide on the free beer for a year. Again, your comments are welcome at the end of the presentation. So here's a very interesting mugshot. Hopefully, I think I have more hair in that picture than I do now. I've been in the Oracle space for over 20 years, was in retail and manufacturing for 20 years before coming into consulting 10 years ago. I've been leading the Oracle EPM team here at Datavail for now over 5 years. A little bit about RHF, Retirement Housing Foundation. They are a prominent not-for-profit dedicated to affordable housing across the U.S. Hundreds of properties, and what's unique, one of the uniquenesses about them and why we wanted to bring this is multiple fiscal years. In order to keep their applications rolling and make it interesting for themselves, they have multiple fiscal years. So while their corporate side or their overhead side runs on one fiscal year, their properties are on rotational fiscal years in order for not all tax reporting to be due at the same time. So you'll see calendars here that have a fiscal year that end all 12 months out of the year. So we'll show how that came together in planning. They were an early adopter of Cloud Fusion ERP. Everything was in Excel when Jesus first jumped in with both feet into the deep end of the pool. An RFP was issued back in 2022 to bring EPM planning for both their corporate side and for the affordable housing, where you'll see all of these calendars. And it's all centralized in an office in Southern California. So everything that is being done is centralized with input from their properties across the United States. One of the things that we wanted to do here, since they are a not-for-profit, if you wanted to know a little bit more about RHF, we do have a link to their website that'll be included in the deck when it's posted. The implementation challenges, they've spent many years making beautiful Excel macros all come together, led by a number of experienced analysts and management team. They've got that fiscal year that made it a great way to do their accurate reporting, have their reporting coming out, but it also creates a lot of challenges when you're trying to take that from Excel and merge it into a single application. That Excel, of course, we all know that we can do anything in Excel, so it had various financial views and roll-ups. Jesus will walk through how Datavail accomplished that for them. They have implementation was initially done with the legacy PBCS SKU. So many things that you'll see in the financial and the workforce models that were built out were before they moved into the enterprise application. Moving that into a decentralized model and allowing the properties and property managers to contribute to their activity. A lot of change management, as we can all appreciate, when you're taking it from one to many, if you will. And then narrative reporting and Apex, a number of reporting opportunities that were out there that allowed for greater insight, greater activity by putting it with the individual where it belongs, and also the distribution capabilities with narrative, and then the dashboarding capabilities that you'll see with Apex. And again, if we stay on the track of Apex, knowing that Apex as a standalone product will now in the near future be merging into part of an EPM and be offered in the EPM environments also. Many of the nice to haves that are in Apex will also be blended into some of what's now going to be available on the EPM side. So implementations of solutions as they came along started with EPM Planning, moved to Oracle's narrative reporting in the EPM environment, and then the Apex solution for the dashboardings and the interactive reporting. So with that, the return on investment, not to restate the obvious, the planning capabilities being decentralized, the reporting efficiencies created by both narrative and Apex, the operational improvements. I'm sorry, I don't want to read the slide. The operational improvements, the integrations, bringing data into planning, leaving all of those Excel databases behind, allowing the addition of the data, the calculation based on the KPIs, the entry through forms and other opportunities there to create those operational improvements. And then obviously anything that's built, looking at that flexibility and scalability for growth. How do we move it forward? How do we make it sustainable? How do we make it easy to use, easy to train, easy to maintain going forward? So with that, I will stop sharing here. I want to enter into and actually display here after the first 15 minutes and spend 15, 20 minutes walking through what does planning look like as it's built, those financials, the workflow. We'll take a look at the narrative reporting side and then the Apex side. And again, we do have Kent here from RHF. Jesus will be presenting as our solution architect. And then Arun Kancharla is also joining us for specific questions related to narrative and how things were built around those applications. So with that, I'm also going to turn my camera off just from a resource standpoint, and I'm going to stop sharing and pass this. Well, would you like me to pass it first, Jesus, or I know I can also, I'll walk it through and say, of course, this is our RHF dashboard, and then the RHF dashboard for Apex. We're going to look at the affordable budget process by company, how that all comes together as they move through their applications. How some of what was in tabs has now gone forward. And I'm going to leave it there because I think this is much more interesting if Jesus is actually walking it through. Jesus, if you'd also like that, like to have the deck, I know that you have it if you'd like to pick up on any of these slides before you actually show. So with that, I'm going to drop the share and turn my camera off so we have the resource. Jesus, are you ready to take over?
Yes, sir.
and it's all yours.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the default screen of RHF's application. It's your default screen. What we've done for them is we've created several navigation flows, depending upon whether they are a corporate user or whether they are affordable housing users. There, as you can tell already, there's two types of budget. There's two ways of completing the budget. One from the corporate perspective that's done once a year, and one from the affordable housing perspective that's done basically on a monthly basis, depending upon the company or the property that's being worked on. So let me just jump into the dimensions here. And David or Kent, please feel free to jump in at any point if you want to make add some additional information. So from the period dimension perspective, what you'll see is that we have our regular calendar periods. And then on top of that, we have our fiscal periods, which are basically P1 through P12. And then for one of the other applications we have here, we have a daily piece. That's because they're capturing census data on a daily basis. So having these three period members or types of zero level members, the reason we had to do it this way is that we have two types of ledgers. We have a primary ledger and a secondary ledger on the ERP. All this is connected to the ERP via data management, and I'll jump into that here in a second or two. So anyway, that's the period dimension. Then we go into the company dimension. And so also from a company perspective, we've also organized it by what's known as HUD contract start months. And that's for your properties, your affordable housing properties. So for example, these different properties have a HUD contract start month of March. So about 6 months prior to the start of when the contract's going to start, they need to start the budgeting process. So in order to be able to utilize workflow, we organize this dimension in this manner so that when we click on workflow to start, it's going to start all the properties under March, and so on and so forth, as far as the other months are concerned as well. And then we also have the fiscal period organization, because there are companies that are in March, they have a fiscal year start of March, but aren't necessarily the same ones that are with a contract start month. So again, this is done from a data load perspective. We also have another alternative hierarchy. This is where we, our affordable housing, and these are the properties that go into the SoCal one. Okay, so any questions or comments on dimensionality? Any additional points you want to bring up, David?
No, I think that works fine. It's
Okay.
really the calendars and how everything's rolling together that I wanted to make sure that we were showing to the participants and the attendees.
Yep. Okay. So with that said, the last thing I want to show real quick is just the accounts dimension here. So with the accounts dimension, we have accounts that are only used by the census daily database. We have accounts that are used by reporting cubes, financial cube, and within the workforce accounts, these are all just workforce accounts. We don't have any of these other accounts within the workforce accounts. The reason we do that is so that we can do what's known as an XWrite or XREF from the workforce module into the financials cube. And again, please recall that all this is PBCS. This is not enterprise, so there are no modules. This was all built. due to the fact that they had PBCS. So that said, I'll go ahead and go back to the default screen. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the one of the affordable HUD contract start months. So again, these are the different navigation flows that have to be built for each of the HUD contract start months. This last one is for the corporate users, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into October here. So with this navigational flow, we have a cluster. Within that cluster, we have the different processes that the budget analyst and or the users will go through. So they'll start off here, then they'll move slowly but surely across the way, and then they end up, getting to the affordable expenses section. This is where, they'll do their final inputs or adjustments in the system. Now, what you'll see here is that I have actual and I have base, and all these are level 0 members. Now, just because they were PBCS, what we had to do was to prepare them for enterprise in the case they ever went to enterprise. So we went ahead and created the plan element dimension um, because it was necessary to introduce them to the plan element dimension now while all the reports and forms and everything was being built, as opposed to later when all those things would end up having to be rebuilt. So again, I'm at the 0 level here, except for the period dimension, and here's the reason why. So with this, they'll be able to now, let's say I wanted to go and look at this meals expense in Q2, and I'm curious whether I'm going to, have another meals expense. Uh, and so now I want to see where that came from. And so I'll go ahead and click on that, right click, and now I'm able to drill to source. So by drilling to source, thanks to the data management integration that was created and the way the data was loaded, that takes us into our data management page from the form. It provides us with a link to go to the ERP system. And as you can tell, I'm already logged into the ERP system. So that's one of the requirements. You need to be in the same browser in order for all these links to work properly. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. That jumps over to the ERP system, and there's the value that we pulled, the period activity. Now, if I wanted to research this further, I could go ahead and follow the links there. Now, all this is based upon, the security that the users might have to be able to then, keep drilling down on within the ERP system. But as you can see, what we did was we jumped from a form into data management piece, then over into the ERP piece. So that's the planning component of it, as far as and how the periods are being utilized and how drill 3 is being utilized from a planning perspective. In addition to planning, they also have implemented narrative reporting. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to narrative reporting. Within narrative reporting, we're going to go into the library here. I've already picked this one as my test one from before, so I'm going to go ahead and show that again. Well, show it to you guys for the first time. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick those as okay. And now what you can see is the links that were over here in the form are now being displayed here. So here too, if I want to, I can go drill to source. Again, this is all made possible because of the way that the data integration was done with the Cloud Fusion that is allowing us to do, drill through from planning all the way back to the ERP. And again, here's my link. Go ahead and click on that. That opens up another tab and takes me to the ERP system for that particular number. So from a from a process flow perspective, that's, this is how the users are interacting with the system, um, and able to research, actuals and so forth, via the drill through. The last thing we need to show you here is the operational dashboard that was created for them using Apex. And it's not just the dashboard that's being utilized. They've also, the main purpose of using Apex for them was to simplify some of the activity that the users were having to do in the ERP system. And so rather than having them go through all the fields and all the screens within the ERP system, it was simplified so that they're only seeing what they need to see. So from that perspective, this is where the operational dashboard came into play. This operational dashboard data, this is coming from the planning daily cube. Now, what happens from the planning daily cube is that data is loaded, census data is loaded into it, on a, if possible on a daily basis because it's a daily cube, and then data is extracted out of planning and loaded into Apex, and this is where you end up getting these reports from. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that on this particular date within the Southern California Region 4 for all properties, you can see I can pick the different properties there. They had 274 available units, 274 of them were occupied, so on and so forth. They're different statistics. Now, as we switch through these, I'm going to go ahead and take a gamble here and go ahead and switch to this one. Let's just do East Coast. I want to go ahead and select all properties again. Now, you notice the properties ended up changing based upon the selection. So we got Mayflower there. Go back. And I know you all have seen this before, but in other applications, but you can't really do this in planning. But anyway, so I'm going to select all properties. I'm going to hit run it. Now what happens is this data is then updated. I mean, obviously because we had different selection. And it takes a little bit of time to get going, but as you can see, it's starting to fill out the different percentages there and the different graphs that they utilize, and so on and so forth, as far as Apex is concerned. And really, David, that pretty much does it in a nutshell. I mean, I can go into a little bit more detail depending upon the questions that are asked. Kent, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add about the Apex piece or for that matter, the planning piece as well. So David, I'm going to turn it back to you, sir. And if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sure, as I reach for the mute button, sorry about that. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to grab the screen for a second.
Yeah.
And come back to what you saw on the before and after as I started to walk through this as Jesus presented. Sorry, I'll back up a few screens. Walk through the different opportunities that were built into planning. Also, what was shown in Apex as far as some of the level of reporting. Again, if we're speaking to what we've all had in a before and the multiple pages, and what it has come into in terms of the flow that Jesus just showed as it walks through the budget analyst process and how they access the different information that replaces those screens. Again, there were multiple sheets before for payroll and replacement reserve that are now built directly into the product and are accessible either directly in the forms. So as we take it forward and we're able to say, okay, on the corporate side, with the regular payroll, overtime, temporary, and give it its own workflow process under a corporate process. So it's literally going from the menu and walking through two separate screens with two separate sets of security control, both from the front end and then the locations that are being able to be seen in the actual application. Looks like the red box is highlighting around something else. And then the Apex, which I know this is a better screenshot. It's kind of centered a little bit differently, but it does show in one concise exactly what the operational dashboard looks like for that day. Where is that particular property? It allowed for interactive control as you move through it to just change it from one to the other as one to the other is changed. So if we put it into a multi-property, multi-unit, able to go in and select location 1 and then location 2, and all of the graphs and colors would move along with that selection process. So as the RHF team does the overall analysis, they're able to see exactly what is happening and exactly how
I think we're missing your screen, David.
I'm missing the screen. I was going to say I'm getting messages on the side. Sorry. And they're not seeing all the goodness that you have there. Hold on just a second. My apologies. All right. Does that look better to what I've been speaking of?
Yes, sir.
We'll just back up a few screens. Again, the before and the after are all on that budget process. The multiple tabs coming from a previous Excel page that are now built into a budget process for affordable, as it's known. A budget process that is a completely separate group of separate tiles walking through, again, security controlled there also, leading into the Apex dashboards that you just received a little bit of a taste of as Jesus walked through that, where this completely interactive, allowing the reviewer to go through and change and pull down one at a time what they're looking at. Jamie, I see a hand raised. Can you either unmute or see what the question is there for us?
Yep, just 1 second. Oh, I don't see any hands raised now. If you have a question, post it in the Q&A. Thanks.
All right. So my apologies. I saw the hand get raised up on top. I didn't have a name with it. So as we look at this, this would be completely interactive. So as Kent and his team are doing analysis, and this is also open to other levels of management that may be a district manager or operational manager, they can walk through and see numbers change directly through as they're doing their month-end analysis or as they're doing their budgeting, and actually see these types of dashboards change throughout their process. Overall workflow, just a few of the high-level items that you were able to see as we went through. The contract start month, the region, there's multiple calendars, again, that were built out in order to facilitate all of this. The payable side have a number of approval rules that are built into Apex. So everything on the front end side is walking through that with some custom rules built that are all possible within the Apex environment to allow it to do what it does and return the data. I hit another free beer for a year, which means my next slide must be the overall Q&A. So Jamie, I know we're at about 40 minutes past the hour. If you'd like to unmute everyone, or from a Q&A standpoint, if there are questions, you've got all of us here ready to take it as long as we can get off of mute and share the right screen in order to answer the question.
I'm talking away and I'm muted. It looks like Jesus is answering a question that came through the Q&A. Let me see if there's an easy way where I can unmute everybody at once.
Jesus, do you want to go ahead and take that? I'm not sure if it's showing that. Could the dashboard be viewed by limited users?
Yeah, I'll just read the question out loud here real quick. So the question is, could the dashboard be viewed by limited users? Kent, would you mind answering that, sir? As far as from my answer was yes, because
yes,
yeah, okay.
yeah. We have special users for just individual property managers, regional managers, executive staff. So yes, different access for different people.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I'm in the process of giving everybody access to talk. Just make sure that you, if you do ask a question and you plan on receiving or want to receive CPE credit, that you also post that question in the Q&A. But I think that everybody now has access to talk if you would like to ask a question. Okay. There's another question in the Q&A.
Yeah. So can you create groups to view certain dashboards? For instance, only certain people should see revenue dashboards, but not all users. And Kent, if you don't mind taking that one as well, sir.
Yeah, I guess you could. That would probably be a Rune question, but I do think you could have a separate set of dashboards for certain users. And so some users could see revenue, some could see expense, some could see census.
Right. But in this particular case, all the users have been granted that dashboard.
Correct, with all those 12 different separate KPIs.
Got it. And then is there any limit for dashboards, at least on the Apex side? And as far as, unfortunately, I'm not.
And
go ahead.
Yep, from that standpoint, yep. Sorry, I'll take that one. From an Apex standpoint, the dashboard side is what we would refer to as greenfield delivery. So Apex in itself ships with a lot of activity. There's not a limit. It's essentially what is being built and what is being accessed from the data. So the Apex database reporting tool, if you will, gives a lot of opportunity to tap in and pull, and then has the security enabled behind it. So if you did have 5 separate dashboards being driven in 5 different directions from 5 different sets of data, is that possible in the Apex world? Yes. As all of those Apex features become an out-of-the-box operational modeling, I believe is the terminology that will be used later in 2024. I'll start from an Oracle standpoint, that will be available within the EPM tool set also, and shipped as part of the Oracle subscriptions for EPM. So the basic answer, is there a limit? No, there's not. It's time and effort to develop those tools. You're welcome. And from an end user, this is your application. We've kind of tried to show it in 30 minutes or less and talk to the benefits of it. Is there anything that you'd like to comment on about what you see as the positive benefits that have come back as you move through it during your first budget cycles.
Well, I think really on the corporate side, we've gotten a lot of feedback on the new process of budgeting. It's much simpler. The workflow built in has made it a lot easier to track and the budgets and look where they are in the workflow. Also, since we're using narrative reporting, there's not an effort, to load those budgets into the ERP since they've already now been in the same, EPM space as narrative reporting. So it's helped the accounting group as well. On the affordable side, we have 180 remote locations that are using it um, from users who aren't very technically savvy. I think, we've, done quite a bit of training and it's been a positive feedback. We do have some people struggling that just struggle with pretty much everything. They're struggling on the Apex application as well because there's a whole nother application in Apex that you did present today for the accounts payable side. But in general, I think it's been positive feedback. It makes the process a lot more visible. And as far as the dashboards go, regionals really like it because they can see those KPIs on one screen. They can look at their region and then individual locations and are able to work with the managers on improving those KPIs.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. I know that that's always change management is always one of the greatest hurdles, like you said, and rolling it out to 180 users that are across the country. It is a challenge, has been a challenge, and always will be a challenge for all of us as we implement new tools and make things better from one person's perspective, but also add new technology and new capabilities. But at the end of the day, it is putting some more of that data, like you said, back in the hands of the end user to make their day-to-day more efficient. Jesus, from an implementation standpoint, I know we've got a few minutes left. What would you say were the greatest challenges as this was built out and you worked with RHF to deliver this final product?
The the part that took quite a bit of time was figuring out that time dimension, and how it was going to be, how we were going to get that data into the system, into the planning system from the ERP, especially with the two ledgers, the primary ledger and the sub ledger. And just so everyone here knows is that those 180 companies that Kent was referring to, they use the secondary ledger. And within then there's also the primary ledger, which is what the corporate uses. So we needed to have the ability to bring in each of the data by calendar month and have drill through. And then we also needed to have drill through for the P1 through P12 period members. So, and then in addition to that, not only do we have a financials cube, we also have a reporting cube, which is an ASO cube. And within that reporting cube, which is where narrative reports is pointing to, you also saw drill through there. So not only are we loading to the PBCS into the planning database, but we're also loading into the ASO reporting database. So those were additional items that needed to be done. And then the biggest challenge, I think, in the data integration was the period mapping, because we had to create period mappings for the P1 through P12s, by year. Then we also needed to create the calendar months, you know, period mappings. So I know from a technical perspective, the team had to do a lot of exports out of data integration over into Excel, and then from there they would update them and then import them back in as more needed to be added uh, for the to the period mapping table. So those were really the main challenges, a lot of the challenges, and then obviously taking the before template budget template and hashing out the fact that there is more than that there were like two or three processes on one worksheet that when they got converted over to planning, they needed to be their own forms. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, David. So this form that this worksheet that you're seeing on your screen right now on the left-hand side, that basically has what's known as the unit type. That's where the it's how many bedrooms and how many apartments are available with that many bedrooms, and then there's a rent calculated. That's one form. That's one set of calculations, and then below that there's the fee schedule that are going to get earned and or charged, and that was a different process with its own set of calculations as well. And then obviously you see the payroll and the revenue and the replacement reserve and so on and so forth. All those were tabs that are part of the process that helped develop this navigation flow. So that in a nutshell is I think some of the more challenging components of this.
All right. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for walking through. Do we have any additional questions either into the chat, or I believe, like Jamie said, she did unmute all?
I don't see any other questions coming through. So I think they've all been answered.
Okay.
Again,
And
while
I
we're
will.
waiting, we'll give people a few more seconds. And while we're waiting for that, I want to say thank you again to OpKey for sponsoring, or sorry, Datavail, sorry, to Datavail for sponsoring EPM Week. We really do appreciate that sponsorship we have with you and the partnership throughout the year. To all of the panelists for being here on a Friday afternoon. We appreciate it. And to our attendees, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday to be here. And with that, this will conclude today's webinar. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.
You as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.